Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror. Today we are going to deepen our studies of werebeasts and discuss the best way to hunt, find, and destroy these murderous predators. Although werebeasts are classic monsters of Dungeons and Dragons, in the Ravenloft campaign setting, these creatures received great attention and development in order to become unique and complex opponents. The main book with information about these creatures is the Van Richten's Guide to Werebeasts, an in-depth study of the beasts that lurk under the skin and face of mankind, in a series of tomes about the horrors that inhabit the lands of the mists. This video will not focus on game mechanics, but will draw directly from the lore of old books about these creatures in Ravenloft, especially in the second editions of Dungeons and Dragons. If you play 5th edition, you will notice that there are some differences in the approach of werebeasts, but this video can be a source of information or inspiration to create new and dangerous villains and enemies for your campaign. In this video, we will explore their powers and vulnerabilities, their lairs and social masks, and the best way to hunt and destroy them. Are you ready? As we approach the marshy lands of Mordant, our studies of lycanthropy reveal to us the powers and weaknesses that come with this condition, as well as how to best hunt down and destroy those who carry the inner beast. Will we be ready to confront the predatory beasts that lurk in our society? Will we be able to destroy such creatures, or perhaps even end our own existence before it is too late? Hour of the Raven. Those who intend to hunt werebeasts must prove themselves skilled hunters, and most above all, seek to know the enemy before acting. Werebeasts are magnificent and lethal predators, and are rarely placed in the role of prey. A werebeast hunter must above all try to unravel the secrets of the monster mentality, know the habits and weaknesses of his prey, and know how to weigh the risk of this activity, and the penalty of meeting a brutal end or being infected by the same evil he intends to destroy. A hunter should keep in mind that hunting a monstrous predator is not an easy task. Werebeasts in their humanoid form can be indistinguishable from other members of their humanoid race, and can use their wit and intelligence to confuse, deceive, or harm those who hunt them. The different bestial forms of a lycanthrope pose a great danger to hunters. In their animal form, these creatures usually show themselves larger and stronger than a common animal of that species, being terrible predators. In their hybrid form, they seem to enjoy the best of both human and animal forms, enjoying powerful physical attributes and dangerous claws and fangs, but still retaining opposable thumbs and the capacity of speech. A werebeast's physical attributes are exceptional, and their strength and dexterity often surpass human capabilities. Regardless of whether the humanoid form is weak or clumsy, as soon as they transform, these creatures will enjoy equal or greater strength than the strongest humanoids, and will be as agile as a predator in their physical prime. All lycanthropes in their bestial form also gain heightened senses that far surpass those of the humanoid race to which they belong. Their eyes may be able to see in total darkness, their hearing can hear sound from a great distance, and their sense of smell can sniff out the most subtle of fragrances. Although these heightened senses are always present in their bestial forms, natural werebeasts also maintain these heightened senses in their humanoid form, and even infected lycanthropes report an increase in their sensibilities. Many were the hunters who became the hunted by betraying their presence by their scent and the sound of their arrival. The first step in a successful hunt is to know what kind of creature you are facing, and to unravel not only the monster's phenotype, but also whether it is a natural, pathological, or maledicted werebeast. Identifying the phenotype of these monsters is crucial. Although these creatures are powerful predators, their weaknesses can vary drastically depending on the origin of their condition, the phenotype, and even from individual to individual. In their animal or hybrid form, lycanthropes are virtually invulnerable to common weapons, and their wounds heal immediately. In their humanoid form, infected lycanthropes can be injured normally, but natural werebeasts still retain this invulnerability. This is not a precise means of identifying this monstrosity in their humanoid form, however, as natural lycanthropes retain some control over their regenerative capabilities, and may simply delay the healing and regeneration of their wounds to foil the hunters. Given this invulnerability, the best weapons for hunting and destroying a lycanthrope are always enchanted weapons, and magic weapons are an effective means of inflicting wounds on a werebeasts. The rarity with such enchanted weapons are found in the Land of the Mists, however, can become a serious problem for hunters. However, lycanthropes are also vulnerable to common weapons, made from specific materials. These weapons not only cause severe damage to lycanthropes, but they can also make it difficult for their wounds to regenerate, which can be a valuable tool to identify one of these creatures. Some ancient legends claim that silver weapons are effective against any lycanthrope, but this mistaken assumption has cost many hunters their lives. While it's true that silver weapons can be effective for hunting werewolves and some other phenotypes, there are creatures that are indifferent to contact with silver and have specific and more exotic vulnerabilities. In addition to the vulnerability to weapons made from a particular material, the different werebeast phenotypes also have a chemical vulnerability, and contact with this substance in its natural state or in a specially prepared compound can cause fatal poisoning. The best strategy to quickly murdering a werebeast is to expose the creature to its chemical vulnerability, either through poisoning by ingestion or by infusing this substance into weapons. Few lycanthropes can resist for long if they receive constant wounds that contain such agents. However, it's very difficult to trick a werebeast into accidentally coming in contact with these substances, as they have a high chance of noticing the presence of these toxins and have a high aversion to their presence and contact. Discovering the chemical toxin or common weapon material that can harm a particular lycanthrope phenotype is an important element in winning a battle against these creatures. Most werebeasts of the same phenotype respond to the same vulnerability, but it's possible to find creatures that deviate from the general rule, especially among maledictive werebeasts. One of the most difficult werebeasts to battle are the wererats, as each of these creatures is unique in their vulnerabilities. Even knowing what a werebeast's vulnerabilities are, hunters should be aware of the dangers surrounding the act of hunting these dangerous predators. Perhaps one of the most important steps at the beginning of a werebeast hunt is to understand the creature's mind, and unraveling whether your enemy is a natural or cursed werebeast that retains its mental faculties, or if it is an infected or cursed lycanthrope who loses control of his actions during the transformation. Unraveling this first step can be difficult but crucially important for hunters. The battle against lycanthropes who are aware of their actions during their transformations is much more difficult and becomes a duel of strategy between two different hunters who actively pursue their own goals. Hunting down a werebeast who has no control over their actions, in turn, involves a considerable amount of investigation to identify the unfortunate host of the beast within. Only observation of the creature's behavior and the consequences of its actions can reveal the distinction between these characteristics. And a hunt must be divided in two important stages. The first is identification, and the second is the capture or extermination. The identification phase usually begins tragically with the finding of the gory remains of its victims. These creatures often leave a trail of death around them, and the carnage that surrounds their kills can sometimes make a butcher feel sick. The thorough examination of the corpse left by a lycanthrope is an important starting point for an investigation. Werebeasts tend to leave bite and claw marks that are larger and deeper than animals of the same phenotype, and their blows are often more vicious and bloodthirsty than those of a common animal. While a natural predator kills to satisfy its hunger, the victim of a werebeast attack sometimes show wounds that are only intended to cause pain, suffering, and terror, as if some sort of cruel conscience were behind these violent acts. The analysis of the gory remains on the bodies and of the crime scene can also reveal a great deal about a lycanthrope's degree of awareness, its eating habits and phenotype, or even the humanoid identity of the killer monster. Relevant details of the body can indicate if the victim was surprised by an unexpected attack, or if it fought against the beast. Reveal the corresponding phenotype of the animal or creature that attacked it, or even have some torn object or tissue that have fallen from the transformed beast and can help in their identification. The identity of the victims is another tragic clue that may differentiate the presence of intelligent werebeasts or lycanthropes who do not have any control during their transformations. Natural werebeasts are often experienced predators that act with cunning and intelligence to hide their crimes. Their victims may be chosen for personal or rational reasons, but they are often carefully selected to avoid detailed investigation or clues leading to their whereabouts. On the other hand, lycanthropes who have no control over their transformations or their actions act like beasts. These creatures, however, still maintain an emotional and psychological link with the host mind, and it's not uncommon for them to seek the proximity of loved ones, with tragic results. Thus, the presence of victims who are from the same family or social circle are often signs of the presence of infected lycanthropes. When the state of the victims denotes excessive brutality and savagery, that may be the indication of a creature acting under the effect of a bloodlust. This state is usually associated with the first transformation of a pathological lycanthrope, or the puberty of a natural werebeast, although it can also be found in hungry or wounded creatures. A hunter of these monsters must be careful and act fast to take advantage of this state, because despite the creatures becoming more dangerous and violent, they also become less intelligent in their actions and more prone to making mistakes. After these first steps in identifying these basic informations, a hunter can try to track the monster through the creature's footprints and other environmental details such as broken twigs, wood scratches, or damaged vegetation to identify its direction. This work is often difficult and can become more complex in a location where animal life is abundant, and the help of an experienced ranger, druid, or hunter may be needed. A hunter should be aware, however, that some lycanthropes such as werebeasts or wereravens can take flight, and signs of their passage, if exist, will be high up in the treetops or just at their landing sites. With the help of an experienced tracker, it is possible for hunters to try to find the lair of these creatures. Some werebeasts have urban lairs, while others have sought out wilderness areas to settle. Infected or cursed lycanthropes have no control or memory of their transformations, usually continue to live normally in their communities, and their homes are indistinguishable from those of other inhabitants of the region. However, natural or cursed werebeasts, who are aware of their nature and transformation, often keep homes prepared to meet their needs and hide their presence. In urban lairs, a lycanthrope will certainly maintain secret exits that allow the creature to go hunting without attracting the attention of its neighbors. Furthermore, given the constant need to feed on meat, it is not uncommon for these locations to have an appropriate place to trap victims or preserve their meat for an extended period. Dr. Rudolf van Richten believes that urban lairs of werebeasts may show symbolic signs of their nature and resemble the lairs of animals of the same phenotype of the beast within. Thus, a wererat's urban lair can be decorated with countless accumulated trinkets, have more escape routes, passages that connect to sewers, or lower and narrow corridors. Investigating a werebeast's urban lair may reveal clues to their crimes, such as blood-stained clothing or victims' objects, but investigators must be careful and creative to create excuse to explore such places. Otherwise, they may become criminals and invaders in the eyes of the law. The wilderness lairs of werebeasts most of the time are no different from the homes of creatures of that same phenotype. However, this appearance of animal lair is only superficial, and after its visible entry, the place will certainly have unusual objects for a beast lair, with traces of the identity of its intelligent and cruel inhabitants. Homes in wilderness areas are never too far from communities where the beasts hunt, and can show crucial elements to identify the creature's habits and phenotype. It is not uncommon for these homes to be protected by natural or mechanical traps, or even be shared by other animals of the same phenotype as the creature. Those who find the home of a lycanthrope have an excellent opportunity to turn their lair into a trap for the beast. However, hunters must be extremely careful, as werebeasts can easily sense the presence of intruders in their home, and they certainly know the secrets and resources of their lairs. Another danger in exploring the home of these creatures is the possibility that these monsters are not alone, as many lycanthropes adopt social behavior and keep the company of other creatures that may be close to their home. Tracking these creatures is not enough, however, and this step must be followed by the creature identification. This is a step that must be taken very seriously by hunters, under penalty of condemning innocent individuals to death or making false accusations. The sighting of the hybrid and monstrous form of a lycanthrope is a clear way of identifying the presence of werebeasts, but hunters should always be careful not to jump to conclusions, as other monsters such as wolf weres can also assume similar monstrous forms. Some traits such as age, scars, or eye color of the hybrid form are retained and may be elements that help identify them in their humanoid form. Scholars claim that some humanoid races also impact a creature's hybrid or animal form. Gnomes and halflings tend to become creatures slightly smaller in size, while hare lycanthropes from humanoid races such as ogres and trolls are slightly larger. In their animal form, these creatures are usually larger and stronger than a common animal specimen, but just the observance of these characteristics among a group of animals is not a determining factor. Numerous distinct specimens of an animal exist in nature, and some werebeasts may also have exceptionally less conspicuous animal forms. If the hunter is tracking a natural werebeast, a very rational and intelligent behavior for an animal might be an indication of the monster's presence, but this doesn't apply to pathological lycanthropes in animal form. Sometimes, the identification of these infected lycanthropes among their peers is only possible through the use of spells to connect or talk to animals. But rarely these beasts will remain passive for such an artifice to be used. Hunters must be extremely careful about hunting lycanthropes that take animal form to avoid the indiscriminate hunt and extermination of common animals. Many have been the hunts driven by the panic of lycanthropy, which resulted in the extermination of a whole group of common animals in a region, which can be capable of infuriating and saddening ranger and druids. Finally, it is possible to try to identify a lycanthrope in its humanoid form, but this is perhaps the most difficult and dangerous of the tasks. In their humanoid form, werebeasts are indistinguishable from their peers, except for a few minor physical features. While many scholars point out that lycanthropes often develop pointy ears, sharp canines, bulging eyebrows, or long fingers, these signs do not conform to a single pattern, and may be insufficient for identifying or accusing an individual as a lycanthrope. Investigators and hunters must be very careful when investigating these creatures in their humanoid form. Infected lycanthropes are often not aware of their condition and live their lives in ignorance, not exhibiting any strange behavior. Perhaps a slight increase in libido and appetite for red meat could be indicators, but again, such details are too subtle to notice. When investigating natural werebeasts, the humanoid form is perhaps their most dangerous form. These creatures are experienced hunters and use the humanoid form as a disguise. Their intelligence and cruelty can be used to gain information and trust from their hunters, spread false clues and evidence, or plant slanderous accusations. Perhaps the only way to truly confirm a lycanthrope's identity is to witness the moment of his transformation. Such circumstances rarely occur in public, however, and hunters must also carefully investigate sightings and the circumstances of deaths caused by the beast, looking for the presence of a common denominator that can be pointed out as a trigger catalyst for their transformations. Infected or cursed lycanthropes who do not control their transformations suffer involuntary metamorphoses in the presence of catalytic triggers. These triggers can be classified as symbolic or psychological, and discovering the pattern of their occurrence can give hunters a great power over the beast. Symbolic triggers often represent some change or transition. Some, such as nightfall or the changing phases of the moon, are clearly a symbol of the passage of time. Others, such as the sleep state, the vision of the blood red color, or immersion in total darkness, can represent symbols of loss of consciousness, violence, death, and darkness. Psychological triggers are usually associated with strong emotions such as fear, passion, or anger. Some reports attribute the existence of triggers that cannot be easily classified, such as hearing howling or a musical melody. The triggers that involuntarily transform a lycanthrope can be immensely varied, especially among cursed lycanthropes. Hunters who unravel a lycanthrope's transformation trigger can prepare to face the creature in the way that best suits them, or force the creature to transform and reveal its identity. Once more, natural werebeasts prove to be more dangerous enemies as they have no transformation triggers and have absolute control over their form. More dangerous still, some natural werebeasts maintain a bond with lycanthropes they have infected, and manage to exert subtle control over pathological werebeasts, commanding their actions like a pack leader. When hunters face multiple werebeasts, and among them is a natural werebeast, the natural lycanthrope may use the knowledge of the infected lycanthrope's transformation trigger to incriminate one of them, or to suddenly transform large numbers of individuals and order them to hunt their enemies. Once the hunters have accurately identified the lycanthrope, it is time to make a tough decision. Natural werebeasts cannot be reverted from their condition, and the only solution to extinguish the threat they pose is extermination. However, cursed or infected lycanthropes can usually be saved from their condition and return to their previous life. The choice between saving or exterminating a pathological or maledictive werebeast is an ethical dilemma that is difficult to resolve. If the salvation of this individual is possible, this is perhaps the noblest of acts, but such a feat is not simple to be performed, and while trying to rescue an individual, dozens of others may come to grave danger of being attacked by the monstrous beasts. If the hunter's option is to try to save the creature, the next step in the hunt is to capture the monster alive. Natural werebeasts can shapeshift at will and remain intelligent throughout the process, and because of these abilities and versatility, they are extremely difficult creatures to capture. Infected or cursed lycanthropes that assume only the animal form may perhaps be captured with traps that would be used to capture normal animals of their corresponding phenotypes. In these cases, it is important to have the presence of an experienced hunter or ranger with the hunting party. Trapping a monster in its hybrid form proves more difficult. These creatures are more versatile in their abilities and show a greater insight. For the most part, the creature will avoid obvious traps, and the presence of an experienced thief to set complex traps is desirable, or the use of mystical means of imprisonment. Sometimes, to deceive and distract the monster, it is necessary to appeal to its most primitive instincts, to induce the creature to make mistakes. A monster that is hungry or in a state of bloodlust will be more brutal and violent, but it will act irrationally and will be more likely to fall prey to a trap that imprisons it. If a lycanthrope's humanoid identity is known, it is possible to try to deceive or convince the individual to be imprisoned in a cell. Regardless of the way the creature is imprisoned, it is recommended that hunters have a lot of planning and absolute control of the environment in which their plan will be executed. Finally, if trapping the creature isn't a viable option, it's up to the hunters to exterminate these monsters. Anyone dedicated to hunting werebeasts should be aware that direct combat with the creature can be lethal. Even in case of a successful extermination, direct contact with their fangs and claws pose a high risk of infection by lycanthropy and should be avoided. The best and most efficient way to destroy a werebeast is to discover its chemical vulnerability and try to expose the creature to contact with this lethal substance. A good strategy to exterminate such monsters is to create traps capable of injuring the animal with blades, arrows, or piercing points that are baited in the chemical substance capable of poisoning it. If the creature avoids these traps and combat is inevitable, it is necessary that the hunters have an experienced and balanced group, armed with magical weapons or weapons from materials to which the creatures are vulnerable, preferably baited in the chemical substance lethal to these monsters. Once again, we highlight the dangers of hand-to-hand combat with such beasts, and emphasize that the use of spells and ranged weapons that can harm such creatures from a distance is recommended. As we reach the final conclusions of Aurex Nuikin's studies on lycanthropy, we realize the dangers and horrors we pose to those around us. We urgently need to find a cure for the lycanthropy disease that turns us into werewolves, or find a way to end our cursed existence. Our proximity to the border with Mornand makes our search for the renowned monster hunter Dr. Rudolf van Richten and the priestess of Hala even more urgent, so they can help us end this torment. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and activate notifications. In our last study of Werebeasts, we will further explore the pathology of lycanthropy, the possibility of a cure, and the different phenotypes of these supernatural beasts.